This is a Dreamcast disc and is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on a hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers.
Dreamcast, up to 6 billion players.
Welcome back to the stage of history.
Why don't we play together?
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go!
Please stop this disc now.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Dreamcast Junkyard Dreampod. My name is Tom, and joining me, there's only 2 of us today, but joining me is a man who is described in some circles as the Ron Burgundy of Dreamcast podcasting. His name is Rob Jones.
Let's do this.
How are you, Rob? Okay?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good, yeah.
Yeah.
All good. Chilling out on the bank holiday, not doing much, and that's how a bank holiday should be.
Exactly, I totally agree. Just for those listening, just to give a little bit of reasoning why there's only 2 of us on today. In the United States, obviously, they don't have bank holidays, and we do in the UK. And Aaron is predisposed with other plans, and Gaz is still at Play Blackpool. It's something which we will touch on shortly. So there's only myself and Rob. But hopefully we can guide you through the rest of the podcast and be entertaining and informative. I don't know if we've been that in the past episodes, but we'll certainly try from this one onwards.
We shall.
Yes. So as we usually do start these things, Rob, have you been playing anything in the last week or so since we last spoke?
I have, but I'm afraid I'm going to let the side down that it's not been on the Dreamcast, I'm afraid. Do you want me to keep talking?
Yeah, please do. What have you been playing?
Okay, it's still been Mortal Kombat X.
All right,
which,
yeah.
The sort of 14-year-old boy in me is just absolutely loving.
Yeah.
You know, it's so horrendously over the top in terms of everything, the violence, the story, the characters, that it's sort of a great throwback to the early to mid 90s, basically, with Mortal Kombat 1, 2 and 3. And yeah, just so horribly violent.
I haven't actually played it yet myself, but I mean, I've seen screenshots and videos, and it does look like it's something that harks back to the original sort of feel, the original games.
It does, yeah. It's a lot more accessible than the original Mortal Kombats, which I don't know if people remember, but if you played against the computer, even on the easiest settings, it was a real challenge. And you try and beat Shao Kahn on normal, and unless you cheesed him, basically, it was almost impossible. This has got a much gentler learning curve. You can tell that it's a modern fighter. Yeah, it's really good. It's really sound mechanics, very accessible though, which is something I'm always saying, really. But those are the sort of fighting games I like. I mean, I do like games that offer you depth in mechanics because you can learn to master them over time, and it sort of separates the men from the boys, so to speak. But equally, I do just like a game that has very accessible mechanics that I can just jump into. I'm never going to really be massively into the Mortal Kombat scene, but if I can pick up X and just have a quick blast online and do reasonably well, which I can, then I think that's the programmers doing a good job.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like, in the same way that Soul Calibur is one of them games you can just literally pick up and play, and it doesn't matter how many times you've played it, you can still beat someone who might be an expert, even if you're a novice. Is it kind of like that, or? Exactly.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's exactly that. To get that same feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't speak highly of it. Lastly, the only other thing I've been playing, of all things, it's been on the PC, Pillars of Eternity. I don't know if you've...
I've heard of it, yeah. I've not played it.
I kickstarted this, 2.5, 3 years ago, and it was essentially like all those classic old-fashioned isometric Infinity Engine RPGs like Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, Planescape Torment. It was essentially a new one of those, and so far it's been absolutely fantastic.
Brilliant, yeah, I've heard good things. Just going back to you were talking about Mortal Kombat X a minute ago, it suddenly dawned on me that, weirdly, the last Mortal Kombat game I actually bought is Mortal Kombat Gold on the Dreamcast, which is quite appropriate.
Yes, yeah. Have you got into that at all?
Not really, no. I mean, I bought it ages ago. I remember when GameStation were doing that like £2 for £5 offer on Dreamcast games, and I think I picked it up then, and I played it a little bit, but I wasn't overly taken with it, to be honest, because when you compare it to something like something like Soul Calibur or even Dead or Alive 2, it's not really in the same bracket when it comes to quality, but it's still a good, fun fighting game for the Dreamcast.
I agree. It's just, I think, as you say, for you'd have to be a serious Mortal Kombat fan to put that game up above things like, DOA and, even Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, I agree. I've been playing, not a great deal because I'm still unpacking my house from the move recently, and I still don't have the internet up and running yet. So the PS4 has literally just stayed in the bag because there's no point connecting it up if you can't do anything online with it. On the Dreamcast, last week I managed to acquire a copy of a racing game called Demolition Racer No Exit.
Never heard of it.
Have you not?
No, I haven't.
It was a USA only release from Infogrames, I believe, or Ubisoft, one of the two. And it's basically the Dreamcast's take on Destruction Derby.
Oh, yeah, I did play Destruction Derby. Yeah,
it's to be honest, it's actually really fun. It's more of a straight racer with like Destruction Derby-esque elements thrown in. There are different game modes, such as like where you have the bowls where you just basically try and wreck each other. But the vast majority of the racing is it takes place on circuits, and you don't just win by sort of coming first. You also have to get points by smashing into other cars and smashing them against walls and things like that, and creating pile-ups and stuff.
Yeah, I see.
It's good fun. It looks quite good as well, and it's another one of those games which I'll probably say this quite a lot in this episode. It's another one of those games that came out in America and for whatever reason never came out here, and there is no real reason for it not to. One really interesting, not so much interesting, but quite nice features of Demolition Racer is, weirdly, the intro. The intro sequence is it's really well done. It's like a play on those government like infomercials where they tell you how to like drive safely, and then it's interspliced with like footage of just like destruction derbies and a rock band.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's really good.
So what's how's the damage modelling on it? Like you say, you smash into cars. Like how much do the cars degrade?
It's odd that this game is basically built around that type of gameplay, and it doesn't have damage effects that are actually as good or sort of as realistic as something like Speed Devils, for example.
Oh, yeah.
The way the cars deform, they do deform, and you get bumpers flying off, and you get bonnets or hoods if you're in America, and the boot or the trunk if you're in America again. They all fly off, as do doors and things. But the actual bodies of the cars themselves, they just look like they're not deformed realistically. They just look like the panels have just been squashed in by someone's finger, if you get what I mean. They don't look... Yeah. It doesn't look like realistic damage. But like I say, it's a game from 2000. That said, I mean, you've got stuff like the original Demolition Derby, Destruction Derby on the PS1 and the Saturn, and obviously the sequel, where they did destruction of car models quite well. So that's not so great, but
even like the early Carmageddons, I mean, it was probably more cartoony. It was cartoony degradation of the vehicles, but in that you could literally end up driving around with just like a chap, and like it's just like the only thing left is the steering wheel in his seat.
Yeah,
everything else has come off the car. Just the engine, the steering wheel in his seat.
Yeah, Demolition Racer is a really good game, to be honest. I picked it up for next to nothing off eBay, and one other thing I will mention as well is the music. The music during the menus sequences is really good. I just found myself listening to it because it's like various American like rock and indie bands, but yeah. Quite nice. Cool. Yes. Okay. So that's really the only thing I've been playing prior to the weekend, and the reason for that is that this weekend in the UK was one of the biggest gaming events in the calendar. You obviously know about this. Rob, do you want to just explain what Play is for those who are listening?
Play is a series of exhibition events. Essentially, they're expos. I suppose that's how you best describe them. Yeah. And this was the Play Expo in Blackpool, and it's at Play. They're really cool. You get a great mix of all sorts of people from the gaming industry. It's not sort of like a professional trade show like the Games Developers Conference, and it's not on that scale, but you get a lot of retailers, you get independent indie developers take their games and showcase them. You get a lot of people from the arcade and pinball scenes. They come and they bring a lot of old machines that you can play on while you're there, and there's stores and there's talks. You get developers, famous and not so famous, talking about the craft of games and games making. Yeah, they're just really good fun weekends. They tend to be over a couple of days in massive exhibition hall, and there's a bit of everything really.
The couple of talks I saw over the weekend involved, the Oliver twins, who were famous for creating the Dizzy series. To be honest, a lot of my time was spent actually around. I was there as part of the Retro Collect team, and I was manning the Retro Collect stand, getting people to come and play different challenges for the on different retro systems. I did manage to get away from the main stand on a couple of occasions and have a bit of a wander around. Played in a few different arcade games. Spoke to Jeff Minter. I think he might be getting sick of seeing me, to be honest, because every time I go to an event and he's there, I always end up pestering him about something to do with the Atari Jaguar or Atari in general.
Jeff Minter is a mainstay, though, of these sort of exhibitions, isn't he? I mean, he's pretty much at every exhibition in the UK.
Yeah.
And he's certainly the play, yeah.
Yeah, he's a good sport as well, because he seems to have a lot of time for everybody. He must get asked the same questions over and over again, but yeah, he still comes across really like in a really friendly way. Even when I asked him about the recent things that have been going on with Atari, he was like really sort of diplomatic and just said that, just said it how it was, really.
He's a legend. Yeah, he is a legend.
Nice guy.
I got to say, last year I went to a talk by Charles Cecil, the Broken Sword director.
Oh yeah.
It was sort of like a retrospective of his development of the original Broken Sword, because they kickstarted Broken Sword, I think it was 5, the Serpent's Curse, I think.
Possibly, yeah.
Broken Sword 5, the Serpent's Curse, that got kickstarted and came out and was really, really good, and it sort of reminded everybody that that genre was so good, and he's such a big figure, and it was really cool because for an hour he very intimate. That's the great thing with Play. It's not the expos, they're not massive, and these talks, it's not auditoriums full of like 500 people plus. You tend to get, 20, 30, 40 people listening in on them, so you get a much more intimate sort of talk, essentially.
Yeah, you're right. And also because of that, it's very kind of the people who are sort of considered stars within the industry, they're quite sort of accessible, for just the average person, and usually they're really accommodating and just really friendly, and you get a real sense of community when you go to one of these events. I certainly do anyway.
Totally.
Yeah. Anyway, while I was at Play, I had my eye open just to see if there was any Dreamcast things that were worth like checking out or purchasing, or and I did make a few purchases. And should I enlighten you, Rob, as to what I picked up?
Please enlighten these gems that you have picked out. Let's see what we've got. I hope it's not another mint condition Sonic Shuffle.
Okay, I won't mention that one then. No. So there's, as you mentioned earlier in your quite concise summary of what Play is, there are a lot of traders who do come to sell their wares at the event, and one of them is called Console Passion. They're quite a big one, and they do have quite a lot of Dreamcast stuff in their inventory.
Sure.
And quite a few American games as well, and I was just kind of leafing through them, and I picked up a couple of decent ones. I got from them a game called Max Steel, another one that never came out in this country, which is a kind of spin-off from an animated series that was popular in America, sort of in the late 90s, early 2000s. I do remember seeing some. I don't think it was ever broadcast in this country, but I am familiar with the brand name of Max Steel. And to be honest, I actually thought this game had been cancelled. I didn't realise it was ever released. So when I saw it, it was only a couple of quid, so I picked that up. And it takes the form of like kind of like Shadow Man, like over the shoulder, like rolling beat 'em up. And you just basically wander around beating up thugs and pulling switches and shooting people with a gun. And yeah, it's quite playable. It's nothing remarkable, but it's what's the word? Workmanlike.
Workmanlike. Yeah. That's a good phrase. Yeah.
The other one I picked up from Console Passion was a game you might have heard of called Evolution 2.
I've heard of it. I've never played it.
Yeah, I've never played it either. I've got the original one, and the reason I didn't prior to this weekend own Evolution 2 for the PAL Dreamcast is because it's ridiculously expensive for whatever reason. I don't know, but the NTSC version seems to be really, really reasonably priced. I picked this one up for less than £10, so I thought I want that. I'm never going to be able to afford the PAL version because it goes for up to £100, if not more, on eBay. So I got that Evolution 2.
Yeah, nice.
Another one I picked up from another seller called Gamesman, I think his name is. He doesn't have an online presence. He just turns up at these events and sells things really reasonably priced. I got the Japanese version, Dynamite Cop, which is Dynamite Decker 2.
Yeah,
for
I know that.
£5.
That's a good deal.
Really good. And it's in like mint condition, practically. The last one I got from a trader was King of Fighters 2001, which was £10, and that was from Game Dojo. I know you're quite into your 2D fighters, Rob. What's your opinion on King of Fighters 2001?
I'll prerequisite what I'm about to say, that I think that's still a pretty good price for the game. But yeah, I'm pretty into the King of Fighters. And 2001, I would probably say would be the weakest, or I would personally say would be the weakest, or within the top two weakest entries of all of them, because 2001 essentially it was when SNK went bankrupt and went under, and they essentially farmed out all the guys who'd been making the King of Fighters. They all left, or they went to join Playmore, SNK Playmore, the new company that was set up. But at the time, they had to farm out the development of King of Fighters to a South Korean company called Eolith.
Right, okay, yeah.
So 2001, and I think, although don't quote me on this, or people might tell me I'm wrong, 2001 for sure, maybe even 2002, both were actually created by the South Korean company, not the original team. And I think it suffers for it. I think mechanically it's still fine, and if you look at it running, you go, this looks just like King of Fighters, and that's just because they basically took all the pre-existing animation from the games that came before, but lots of things let it down. But anyway, sorry, I don't want to wail on your purchase too much.
Not at all, Rob. I mean, basically, how many King of Fighter games are there actually on the Dreamcast?
I don't know.
Because I've got 3 of them.
I'm sorry, my King of Fighters collection is on the Neo Geo.
I do apologise.
The way it's meant to be played. No, but seriously, no, they did some good conversions. I don't know how many they released in the end on the Dreamcast. But all I know is that 2001 isn't the best.
Yeah.
But it's really solid. I mean, when I say it's not the best, I mean let's be fair here. Like, any King of Fighters fighter is up there, in terms of quality versus fighter. You can choose any of them and they'll beat the vast majority of other versus fighters hands down. It's just within the super elite genre, the super elite bracket of King of Fighters games, 2001 probably isn't the highest.
Right. It's interesting what you say as well about the game not being produced by SNK, because I was looking at the box and it's got Playmore all over it, and it's got the other, I can't remember what the other name.
Eolith.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no SNK anywhere, and I actually tweeted this earlier on today saying, why is there no SNK written on this box or anywhere on the game? And you've just answered the question, so that's really helpful.
That's the reason.
Wow.
That is the reason.
Very interesting. Yeah, my thoughts on it are that it's, as a bit of a novice, really, when it comes to the King of Fighters games, I thought it played quite well. I mean, I've only played it for like maybe half an hour, and I just chose the usual characters that I generally choose, such as like Terry Bogard, and all the movesets are the same, and I got quite a bit of enjoyment out of it. So, I mean, I'm not a purist by any stretch of the imagination, so my views are not really that valid, but I thought it was, again, serviceable.
Yeah. No, it is completely serviceable. You just boot it up. You can choose the typical guys: Terry, Kyo, Iori. I mean, Iori's always ridiculously overpowered in pretty much all the King of Fighters games, and you can have a blast with it. I'm sorry if what I'm saying has come across as like me being overly negative.
No,
it's not. It's not workmanlike. This game is definitely better than workmanlike. It's just if you compare it to say 98, which I personally think is the sort of like the high point of the series, then it just doesn't match up.
Okay. I did get a couple of other things as well. A friend of mine called Aaron White, he's on Twitter as @AaronUB40. He gave me a burnt copy of Sturmwind. I'm not usually an advocate of like burnt things, especially when it comes to like indie games, because we have to support the developers who make these games. But if someone just gives you a burnt copy of Sturmwind, then you're not going to turn it down.
Sure.
This is a game I'd heard a lot about, seen a couple of videos, but I'd never actually played myself. And I must say, it's absolutely incredible. Have you played it, Rob?
No, what is it? I don't know anything about it.
So Sturmwind is a shmup shoot 'em up, side-scrolling,
Yep.
made by. It was released by Red Spot Games, and it was developed by a company called Duranic, and it started life actually on the Atari Jaguar CD.
Okay.
It was going to be called Native, but then after they switched development to the Dreamcast, the Jaguar version was like cancelled. I think you can still actually download it as an ISO and play it on the Jaguar CD, but you need like a bypass cartridge, to get around the encryption on the
Sure.
Jaguar CD. But Sturmwind, it's absolutely incredible for a game that came out in 2013 as an indie release. You would think that this was made by a AAA developer. The intro sequence is incredible. The music is fantastic. It's got achievements. It's got online leaderboards. You can actually upload your scores to like an online leaderboard if you've got like a code that you can put into the website. I don't know if that's still active, but it was at some point. The graphics are stunning. You have a little ship and you are flying from left to right, and then your enemies are coming at you from like top, bottom, left, and right of the screen. The gameplay mechanic allows you to switch whether or not you fire forward or backwards. So then you can get enemies coming from behind as well. So you've got to quickly switch backwards and forwards. The way that you don't have like an energy bar or a shield. Basically, you have 3 different weapons, and if you get hit by an enemy projectile, for example, you lose that weapon. So then you move on to your next weapon, and then if you get hit again, you lose that weapon, and then basically your lives are your weapons. I don't know if that sounds as clear as mud, but it's in practice.
No,
it's really good, really an original sort of take as well on the sort of the life bar.
So can you regain, when you lose a weapon, can you regain it through pickups?
You can, yeah. I mean, if you pick up the colour of pickup that you're actually already using, then you will just increase the power of that weapon. But if you pick up one that you've not got anymore, then it will just add it back to your sort of weapon bar. So that essentially gives you another life again. Yeah, it's the production value is incredible. The way that the backgrounds kind of they just sort of blend seamlessly with the foreground action that's going on. You got lens flares going off, explosions, and the music is just phenomenal. I can't be more positive about this game, and the fact that it's taken me this long to actually get a copy of it and play it is just wow.
I love my shmups, so I'm thinking I'm even more amazed that I haven't heard of it. So, is this like classic shmup hard, or is it easy to play? Is it easy for you to get into?
I mean, I've not got that far in it yet. I've played it about 3 or 4 times, and it does get difficult. You get to sort of level 3 or 4, and the bosses can be quite difficult. But yeah, if this, I'm playing a game on a Dreamcast from 2013. I'm thinking to myself, this looks like something that is like an indie game on the PS4. It's that good.
Oh, wow.
It's incredible, Rob. Really. Again, I can't heap enough praise on it, to be honest. It's definitely worth seeking out.
I'm definitely going to have to check it out, yeah, for sure.
Even if you just go on YouTube and just have a look at some video footage of it, and just it's jaw-dropping. Massive kudos to the developer, really.
Who was the developer again?
Duranic, I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, Cool. It was published by Red Spot Games in 2013. Cool. Yeah. What else did I get? I think that's it as far as like purchases and acquisitions went. I picked up another joypad. It was boxed, complete in box. That was a £5.
Nice.
Yeah. I think that's about it, to be honest, as far as new stuff goes. Yeah. There was a couple of other Dreamcast-related items that I spotted at Play that I thought I should mention. One of them, sorry, I've told a bit of a white lie here. I did get another game, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. It's an indie game called James and Watch, and that's by a developer called, well, he's on Twitter as random_Dave. I don't know if you want to check him out, but he developed a game which mimics the old Nintendo Game & Watch, and it's about 3 brothers who were called the James Brothers, hence the name James and Watch. Just a bit of a play on words. And basically what it is it comes from a story that was mentioned on the popular retro gaming podcast, the Retro Gaming Roundup, where a couple of the hosts were talking about how they once took their younger brother to a football pitch, and rather than play football, decided it would be more fun to throw their younger brother up in the air and catch him, and then decided that it might be even more fun to throw him up in the air and not catch him, at which point he broke his arm. And this story was something that they said that they told on the Retro Gaming Roundup podcast, and then it was turned into a little homage game. And Random Dave, he only created, I think it was 69 copies of the game. Like, comes in like a little jewel case with a nice front and back cover, and it's an explanation on where the game sort of was born from. But I just thought it was a really nice little indie sort of project to just put out on, especially like on the Dreamcast as well. And I spoke to him, and he was saying that he thought about putting it out on other systems, but then the Dreamcast is so kind of open now that you can kind of do anything you want with it. And he was a really nice guy, and I'm hoping to put some stuff up on the main site about it in the next week or so.
Seems like a nice little curiosity.
Yeah. Basically, how the way the game works is, imagine a Game and Watch, like an LCD display, and you've got the two brothers at the bottom of the screen who kind of move along left and right at random, and then they throw their brother up in the air. So you've got like different arcs of trajectory. Yeah. And then at certain points in the trajectory, you can kind of change whether he flies even further or then now comes back down to Earth. And you've basically got to judge where the two brothers are and then control where the third brother, who is in the air, lands. And if you land on the floor 3 times, if you land the first time, you break an arm. If you land the second time, you break an arm. And if you land the third time, then it's game over. It's basically just trying to get a high score. It's really charming, to be honest. I mean, it does. On the back of the box, it says it's like a bit of an homage to a game called Ball, which was a Game and Watch. So if you've got that or you've played that, then that's kind of what to expect. But when I do, I will do an article on the main site, and I'll put the link up on the article as well.
Cool. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, that was a charming little oddity. The last thing that I saw that I thought worth mentioning was a guy called Paul, who has a website called Paul's Custom Arcade Cabs. He creates, as the name suggests, bespoke arcade cabinets, and he made one which contained the Dreamcast and has like Zombie Revenge sort of all emblazoned over the sides of it. And I just thought it was really, really good. I mean, there's actually an article up on the Dreamcast Junkyard main site now about his creation. If you've got the money, then I'd certainly have one if I could afford one. But
yeah. I love these bar top arcade cabs. They're like if you haven't seen them before, they're like, it's not a full-blown arcade machine. It's like they took the screen part of the arcade cab, and instead of having the big where you've got the coin slot and you'd have the where you'd open the cabinet up and you'd have more electronics, that's all gone. So essentially it's just a screen, and then they've sort of miniaturized the case around it and the joystick pad area in front of it, and so it's literally just a screen and two joysticks, 2 sets of buttons. And you could literally pick them up yourself, and you could just sit them, as I say, on a bar top. And you see them. I call them bar tops because I've only ever seen them really in bars. But if you had the money, I mean, yeah, man, they sound great. I mean, I don't know. Were the machines hard? Obviously, could you change the games? I presume you could change the games out.
Yeah. Like I say, basically all it is inside is there's a Dreamcast, and then he's got the controllers plugged in, but then the controllers are basically stripped back to just the circuit boards, and then he's got wires going from the different input points on the circuit board to the buttons on the front, and also he's got the micro switch. Arcade stick joysticks as well.
Yeah, micro switch stick.
Yeah, so you could theoretically put any game in that would be compatible with a. Actually, saying that, because it's actually the Dreamcast is thinking that it's got controllers sort of plugged in. Maybe you could actually just play any game on it. I'm not entirely au fait with how that would work, but yeah, he's probably the best person to ask. But yeah, there's a Dreamcast in there, so you can put any game in, and if you want any further info, then just check out the article on the Dreamcast Junkyard main site, or go to Facebook and search for Paul's Custom Arcade Cabinets. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to oblige anyone who wanted to ask any questions, because he's a really nice guy as well. So
they look really nice, really, really nice. And I guess that he could offer customization on things.
Oh yeah, all the artwork on the side. You could have anything you wanted. Even like the different types of button on the front, they were all illuminated. But I'm sure you could have any colour you felt like having. To be honest,
awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my Dreamcast spotting at play. There wasn't a massive amount of other Dreamcast stuff, to be honest. There was one Dreamcast setup playing Propeller Arena in like this section that had all like abandoned games and things. So that was quite interesting.
Cool.
But yeah, so play. That was quite fun this weekend. A nice diversion. Apart from the 12-hour coach trip, but we won't talk about that. I'm sure enough people have already bored about hearing about that from my Twitter account. Anyway, speaking of Twitter, did you like that little sort of segue there?
Beautiful, seamless, buttery smooth. Yeah.
Well, we thought we'd ask if anybody had any questions, just that we could answer on this edition of the podcast. Seeing there's only 2 of us today, and there are a few questions that we thought we'd read out. And I don't know, Rob, do you want to go first? Just like sort of saying who it's from and what the question is.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Okay, let's choose one of these out. Okay, yeah. So someone called Damon Philman, and that's Twitter @Damon Philman. He says, Do you think the Dreamcast could have survived if Sega never released the Saturn and skipped a generation?
It's an interesting question, but I mean, wouldn't the PS2 have come out anyway? Or do you think if Sega had not released the Saturn and just gone with the 32X and like sort of used that as the next system, the PlayStation maybe would have been affected by that?
I understand entirely where this question comes from, but I think, as you said, it's not going to stop. The competitors aren't going to stop. And when you consider the sort of competition that had come out, when you consider what's coming on the market, you've got the PlayStation 1, and you've got the Nintendo 64, and Sony and Nintendo, they're not going to just stop. And so maybe there's something in the 32X, in the fact that they go, we're not going to put any money into this generation. We're going to sort of blag it. We're going to sort of coast on the coattails of past systems. And here's 32X. We'll just sort of retreat a bit into our shell and make sure that we're stable and then really go for it the next time. But I think that's sort of revisionist, because I think at the time, I'm not sure, obviously, we're speculating again, but I don't think the guys inside Sega were thinking that way. I don't think they thought that the Saturn was going to be a massive flop.
No.
It was, and when you look at it now, literally, it's one of the. I always think it's one of those consoles where you take one look at it and you go, "Of course, it was a flop. It looks appalling." It looks like a half. Well, no, I'm just saying it is not a pretty console, and it looks like a halfway house system. You've got the cart slot at the back. It takes the discs. It's a black box, and it felt like it was neither here nor there.
Yeah.
It was a halfway house system. But equally, I just don't think Sega could have done that. I don't think they could have. How many years would they have had to have taken out? What's the gap?
I think you're right. I mean, if they'd never released the Saturn, then they would have been going literally straight from the Mega Drive 32X and the Mega CD straight into another generation. It would have been almost a decade, wouldn't it? That they would have been without a new piece of hardware really from the launch of not really, because the 32X came out in 93 and the Dreamcast came out in 99, 98 in Japan, so you're talking 5 years. So
it sounds funny now, doesn't it? Because console generations now, like how long did the Xbox 360 and PS3 last?
10 years.
They were talking about it 10 years, but it didn't used to be like that.
No.
It didn't used to be like that. In the 80s and the 90s, console generations were far shorter than they are now.
Yeah.
And I think they just couldn't have done it. They couldn't have been that. They weren't that financially comfortable to be able to take 6 years without really doing anything new. And I'd say as well, obviously the tech wasn't there. The stuff that they wanted to do with the Dreamcast, they couldn't have done really any earlier than they did.
No, I agree with that totally. But yeah, thanks for your question, Damon. Thank you for that. Next one is Decider VT. At Decider VT says, are new releases somewhat cynical in that they're guaranteed collector's purchases regardless of quality? I kind of get what he's saying here. The games come out and they're all quite highly priced, and it's like as if they're kind of already put on a pedestal just because they're new releases, and they're charged premium prices for. Is that really right?
I think this is a really good question, actually. And I think I'm sort of split. Not the best punditry here, but I'm sort of split. I think, obviously, if you're 100% collector, then you may feel slightly resentful of the sort of the prices being charged for because a lot of them do have the collector's editions, or that's the edition that they're really plumping, essentially. And you might feel like you're held over a barrel. But then again, I'd say that from my experience at least, the quality of these aftermarket releases has actually been pretty good. Like if it was like they were just turning out bog average stuff or bad stuff, then I think this would be more of an issue. But most of it has been pretty good. And equally, I'd say that aftermarket and homebrew sort of sits within its own category. So even if you are a 100%er, someone who has to own everything, then you could always ignore it. I know it sounds funny, but you could ignore that stuff because it's not official. You know what I mean? Because as you say, some of these special editions, they're expensive. You've got to drop serious money for them, and they're very nice, and they're limited edition and all the rest of it. But I don't know. I think as ever, you as the collector or you as the player has to ask yourself, what sort of collector am I? One, and two, do I like these types of games? Because just because someone sticks a limited edition number on something and says we're only going to make XX amount of these, and then we're never going to make any more again. Does that necessarily mean you have to get one? Is it worth it for you? Because they're not, I think they're great, don't get me wrong, I'm totally for it. I think this is one of the most interesting sides of the Dreamcast now. This openness, this ability for guys to release these new games is fantastic. But yeah, they're not official titles, and so unless you're really, really into the genre, into that game that they're releasing, or you have to have everything, both official and aftermarket, then yeah, I'd take a step back.
Yeah, good point, yeah. Do you want to read the next one out, Rob?
Yeah, sure. This was also at Decider VT. Thanks for the questions. He asks, favourite Dreamcast online experiences, but Phantasy Star Online aside, because everyone loves that.
Well, I have to be honest, Rob, I actually never played with my Dreamcast online back in the day because I wasn't allowed to do so. I had to beg my poor mother to just to be able to go and do a bit of browsing on Dream Arena. So to actually play something for any amount of time, it was out of the question. My mum, she just wouldn't let me. So my Dreamcast online experience is pretty much zero outside of Dream Arena.
I'm the same, but at the time, you see, because everyone forgets, when the Dreamcast was released, not everyone was sitting on a 50 to 150 megabyte connection. A lot, specifically in England, I don't know what it was. I think probably in America and certainly in the East in Japan, the infrastructure is far better. But in England, it was still crumbling copper wires from the Victorian era. And it was, unless you lived right next to an exchange, or you were next to a bank or something like that, there's no way you'd get a really, really decent online connection. You were going over some nasty old copper wire that, as I said, was installed probably when the Victorians ruled the country. So I didn't play myself at the time of the Dreamcast released online. Since then, yes, Phantasy Star Online. Obviously, we don't need to talk about it. It's great. The only other title I'd say is Quake 3 Arena. Yeah. But again, when Quake 3 Arena was originally released, I was playing that on PC. And if you were to tell me which was the better experience online, it's the PC. But I do think I'm saying it on the Dreamcast because it's one of the few games I did play online on the Dreamcast, but only later on. I don't even know if it's on official servers. But they do actually do a pretty good job with that. It still translates. You still have the fast-paced, frenetic action. It works still. It doesn't lose too much on the Dreamcast. And I think it's a really, really solid port of a very, very good online multiplayer shooter.
Fantastic. Yes, thanks to Decider VT for those questions. One last question is from Travis Hearn, who asked on Facebook, what genres do you think the Dreamcast was lacking in, or what would you have liked to see more of? The first thing I can think of on that subject is I would have liked to have seen more single-player first-person shoot-em-ups. We talked last week about Half-Life a little bit, but I mean, apart from that, all we had really was Soldier of Fortune, which is, it's passable, and Mac and X, which is not really a first-person shoot-em-up. So
not at all.
No. What about you, Rob?
Yeah, I hadn't thought of shooters, but now I think you've got to trump me. I think, there really was a deficiency. I would say top-rate platformers. Maybe I'm being a bit cheaty here by adding the top rate, but I could if you say Dreamcast platformers, I think of Sonic Adventure, I think of Rayman 2, MDK 2, and Soul Reaver, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver.
Yeah.
For me, those were the platformers that sort of stand out. I'm sure there's more, but if you compare it to the Nintendo 64...
Well, that was a wash with platformers, wasn't it? And good ones as well.
Yeah. I mean, no matter what you want to say about the Nintendo 64, the one thing they did do is nail it on the platformers. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a system that had such great top-quality platformers. And I think that, the Dreamcast lost out a bit there. Otherwise, I agree that RPG-wise, it probably is deficient, specifically considering Sega's legacy with JRPGs especially. Because, I mean, do we count Shenmue? I suppose we might do. Then the only other ones I think of is what we just said, Phantasy Star Online, and maybe Skies of Arcadia. And then nothing else springs to mind. Of course, there are extra JRPGs on the system, but not top-rate ones. And I think, shooters, top-rate platformers, top-rate JRPGs or RPGs, yeah.
Cool. There was one other question, but it was from my girlfriend, and she asked, "How many Dreamcasts does one house need?" But I'm not going to actually qualify that with an answer. Well, there is an answer, and there's never enough.
There's never enough. Never enough. So there should be a Dreamcast in every room. You should be able to play the Dreamcast on the toilet.
Well, you can with Ben Heck's new portable Dreamcast.
That's right, you can, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, Rob. I think we've done enough there. I think we'll call it a day. And I just again wanted to thank you for being on the Dreampod.
No problem.
Again, just to say that all the other guys would have been here if they could, but they are for whatever reasons not able to appear this time. But it's been a great conversation. You can follow Rob on Twitter at
rNicholasJ. That's at rNicholasJ.
And you can follow me at Tom Lee C. You can also follow the Dreamcast Junkyard at Sega Junkyard, and also find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/the Dreamcast Junkyard. And you can also find us on the internet at www.thedreamcastjunkyard.co.uk. And as ever, we do appreciate your questions and interactions on the group. And yeah, thanks very much for listening. Until next time, keep on dreaming.
Bye!
Please stop this disc now.